The stars looked cold and distant as Commander Velthar stood on the bridge of his warship. His tall, gray body moved with purpose as he walked between the control stations. The Zephyrian Empire had been hunting this unknown ship for 3 days now. Soon they would catch it. Velthar's yellow eyes glowed as he studied the readings on his screen. The ship ahead was clearly built for war. Its metal hull was thick and strong. Its energy readings showed advanced technology. This would be perfect for the Empire's needs. "How far to the target?" Velthar asked his crew member at the sensor station. "We will reach them in 2 hours, Commander," the young Zephyrian replied. His voice showed respect and fear. "The ship does not match any design in our records. We have never seen anything like it." This made Velthar think. In his 40 years of military service, the Zephyrian Empire had fought many different alien races. They had beaten the peaceful Altarians in just 6 months. They had enslaved the smart Kepler colonies and taken all their technology. Dozens of smaller alien groups had surrendered without a fight. An unknown warship meant 2 things. Either it was a new race they could conquer and add to their empire, or it was a threat they needed to destroy before it became dangerous. Velthar preferred the first option. New slaves always brought new knowledge and resources. The Zephyrian hunting fleet was powerful. 5 heavy cruisers flew in perfect formation through space. Each ship carried plasma cannons that could melt through the strongest armor. Boarding. Pods hung from their bellies like metal eggs, ready to crack open enemy ships and pour warriors inside. Velthar had led many attacks before. Most alien races gave up quickly when they saw Zephyrian firepower. The few that tried to fight back were always crushed by superior numbers and better weapons. The Empire had grown strong by taking what others had built. "Start jamming their communications," Velthar ordered. "Move into boarding formation, use standard attack plan, break their engines first, then cut holes in their hull. Take their leaders alive for questioning." His crew moved quickly to follow orders. Velthar watched as his ship spread out into their attack pattern. The unknown vessel ahead seemed to be slowing down, as if it knew it was trapped. Good. Fear made captures easier. The Zephyrian commander had no way of knowing that the ship he was chasing was called the USS Liberty. He did not know that its crew of 200 humans had been waiting for this meeting for weeks. He had never heard of Earth or the species that called it home. The Liberty looked smaller than the Zephyrian ships, but appearances could lie. Hidden behind its simple metal hull were weapons and defenses that no alien race in this part of space had ever seen. The humans inside were not afraid. They were ready. On the Liberty's bridge, Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien ships get closer. His brown hair was cut short in military style. His blue eyes stayed calm as he studied the enemy formation. Morrison had spent 20 years in Earth's space navy. He had fought in the border wars against the Centauri pirates. He knew how to handle dangerous situations. 5 enemy ships confirmed, said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. She was Morrison's tactical officer, a smart woman with dark hair and quick reflexes. They are using standard hunter pack formation. Their weapons are about what we expected from our intelligence reports. Morrison nodded. For the past year, human scout ships had been watching the Zephyrian Empire from the shadows. They had seen how these aliens treated other races. They had studied their tactics and their technology. Earth's government had decided that something needed to be done about the Zephyrian threat. "They are blocking our communications, Captain," reported Pete Williams from the communications station. The young man's fingers danced over his controls as he tried different frequencies. "They do not want to talk." "Then they have shown us what they want," Morrison said. "Helm, slow us down more. Let them think we are giving up. All crew, get ready for contact." Throughout the Liberty, 200 human crew members prepared for battle. They had trained for this moment for months. Every person knew their job. Every system had been checked and double-checked. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Lisa Chen started shutting down systems that were not needed. This would hide the ship's true power from enemy sensors. The aliens would think they were capturing a weak vessel. They would learn the truth soon enough. Security Chief Danny Carter handed out weapons to his teams. Small plasma rifles and energy shields were distributed to crew members throughout the ship. Carter had fought in ground battles on 3 different worlds. He knew how to set up defenses that would surprise attackers. In the medical bay, Dr. Karen Foster looked over files about Zephyrian biology. The aliens were based on silicon instead of carbon like humans. They were strong but had specific weak points that could be used against them. Foster's job was to keep the crew healthy, but she also needed to understand their enemies. "All sections report ready, Captain," came a voice over the ship's communication system. Morrison pressed a button to speak to his entire crew. "Remember what we came here to do. We need to learn about their capabilities and gather intelligence. Let them think they have won. Let them come to us." The Zephyrians saw a ship that was slowing down and seemed helpless. What they could not see was a carefully planned trap. Humans had learned the art of war through centuries of fighting each other. They understood strategy and deception in ways the Zephyrians had never encountered. As the alien ships moved closer, Morrison felt ready. His crew was trained and prepared. Their ship was stronger than it looked. Most importantly, they were fighting for something the Zephyrians had never truly understood: the freedom of all the races these aliens had conquered. The hunt was about to begin, but the hunters were about to discover they had become the hunted. Captain Jake Morrison stood quietly on the bridge of the USS Liberty. Through the main viewing screen, he could see 5 alien warships getting closer. Their dark hulls reflected the light from distant stars. These were the Zephyrian ships that had been following them for 3 days. Morrison was not afraid. He had prepared for this moment since leaving Earth 6 months ago. His mission was clear: make contact with the Zephyrian Empire and learn everything possible about their military capabilities. Earth needed to know what kind of threat these aliens represented to human colonies in this region of space. "Enemy ships will reach us in 30 minutes, Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez. She sat at the tactical station, her fingers moving quickly over the control panels. Numbers and charts filled her screens, showing the approach of the alien fleet. "They are maintaining standard attack formation." Rodriguez had studied every piece of intelligence Earth had gathered about Zephyrian military tactics. These aliens always used the same basic strategy: surround the target, disable its engines, then board with overwhelming force. They had used this method to conquer 14 different alien races over the past 30 years. "Communications are still blocked," reported Pete Williams from his station. The communication officer was young but experienced. He had served on 3 different human ships before joining the Liberty's crew. "The aliens are not responding to any of our signals on any frequency." This was exactly what Morrison had expected. According to human intelligence reports, the Zephyrians never bothered with negotiations. They preferred to capture first and ask questions later. Any race that tried to surrender was enslaved. Any race that fought back was destroyed. "Reduce speed to 1/4, Morrison ordered the helmsman. "Make it look like our engines are failing. All departments begin shutdown procedures for non-essential systems." Throughout the ship, the crew followed their captain's orders. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Lisa Chen started powering down systems that were not needed for basic life support. She made sure the changes would show up on enemy sensors, making the Liberty appear weak and helpless. Chen was one of the best engineers in Earth's space navy. She had designed many of the Liberty's hidden systems herself. The aliens would see a ship that seemed to be breaking down, but they would not detect the advanced weapons and defenses hidden throughout the vessel. Security Chief Danny Carter moved through the ship's corridors, checking on his teams. Each group of security personnel had been assigned specific positions throughout the Liberty. They carried weapons and equipment that had been specifically designed to fight Zephyrian soldiers. Carter had studied recordings of Zephyrian boarding actions. These aliens were strong and well-armed, but they relied too much on their standard tactics. They expected their enemies to panic and run. They did not expect organized resistance from a species they had never fought before. In the medical bay, Dr. Karen Foster made final preparations for treating both human and alien casualties. She had spent weeks studying Zephyrian biology and physiology. Their silicon-based bodies were different from carbon-based humans, but they had similar weak points that could be exploited. Foster had also prepared special medical supplies that would be needed for the mission. Sedative gases that would work on Zephyrian nervous systems, restraints that could hold their strong bodies, monitoring equipment that could track their vital signs during interrogation. Bridge to all sections. Morrison announced over the ship's internal communication system. Enemy contact in 15 minutes. Remember, our job is to gather information about their capabilities and their technology. We need to understand how they fight so Earth can prepare proper defenses. The captain paused, then continued speaking to his crew. Let them board our ship. Let them think they have captured us. Stay hidden until you receive the signal to act. When the time comes, we will show them that humanity is not like the other races they have conquered. Morrison had read the reports about what happened to alien civilizations that fell to the Zephyrian Empire. Entire populations enslaved or killed, technologies stolen and used to make the Empire stronger, cultures destroyed and forgotten. The Zephyrians were a threat to every free race in this part of the galaxy. Captain, the lead enemy ship is launching boarding pods, Rodriguez reported. Multiple objects separating from their hull and heading directly toward us. Acknowledged, Morrison replied calmly. All hands prepare for boarding action. Security teams to assigned positions. Medical teams stand by for casualties. Engineering, begin final shutdown of all non-essential systems. The Liberty's crew moved with practiced efficiency. Every person knew exactly what they were supposed to do. Months of training and preparation had led to this moment. They were about to face an enemy that had never lost a battle, but they were ready for the challenge. Through the ship's sensors, Morrison could watch the Zephyrian boarding pods approaching. Each pod contained a team of alien warriors equipped with advanced weapons and armor. They expected to find frightened aliens cowering in their ship's corridors. Instead, they would find empty passages and silent rooms. The human crew would be hidden, watching and waiting for the right moment to spring their trap. The Zephyrians would think they had captured another helpless victim, but they would soon learn that humans were very different from any species they had encountered before. Boarding pods will impact in 60 seconds, Rodriguez announced. Morrison took a deep breath and settled into his command chair. Everything was ready. His crew was in position. The trap was set. Soon the Zephyrian Empire would get its first real introduction to humanity, and it would not be what they expected. The Zephyrian boarding pods hit the USS Liberty's hull with loud crashes that echoed through the ship. Metal cutting tools sliced through the outer armor plating exactly where Commander Velthar had planned. His warriors poured through the holes they had made, expecting to find panicked aliens running for their lives. Instead, they found empty corridors. Boarding leader Kexenol stepped through the breach first, his heavy combat suit clanking against the metal deck. Behind him came 20 of the Empire's best soldiers, all armed with plasma rifles and shock weapons. Their suits were thick armor that could stop most alien weapons. Their helmets had sensors that could see in the dark and detect life forms hiding nearby. Advance and secure, Kexenol ordered his team. His voice sounded mechanical through the suit's communication system. Find the crew and take them prisoner. Standard capture protocols. The Zephyrian soldiers moved through the Liberty's corridors in formation. They had done this hundreds of times before on dozens of different alien ships. The procedure was always the same. Break in, find the crew, overwhelm them with superior firepower, then drag the survivors back to the command ship for questioning. But this ship felt different. The corridors were wider than necessary with high ceilings and multiple levels. Strange symbols marked doorways and intersection points. The air itself tasted wrong in their environmental suits. Too much oxygen, not enough methane. Everything about this vessel suggested aliens that were very different from any they had encountered before. Commander, we have penetrated 3 decks, Kexenol reported through his communicator to Velthar on the command ship. No resistance encountered. No crew members located. This vessel appears to be abandoned, but the ship was not abandoned. Hidden throughout the Liberty, 200 human crew members watched through concealed cameras as the alien soldiers spread out in predictable search patterns. Every movement was being recorded. Every piece of equipment was being analyzed. Every tactical decision was being studied for future reference. Security Chief Danny Carter crouched in a hidden compartment near the main corridor, watching 6 Zephyrian soldiers walk past his position. Through his earpiece, he could hear reports from other security teams throughout the ship. The aliens were following exactly the pattern that human intelligence had predicted. Teams Alpha through Delta, maintain observation, Carter whispered into his throat microphone. Let them reach the command areas before we make contact. Stick to the plan. The Zephyrians moved deeper into the ship, growing more confident with each empty room they found. Their sensors detected no life forms. No energy weapons, no signs of organized resistance. To them, this appeared to be a ghost ship. Perhaps the crew had evacuated before the boarding action began. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Lisa Chen watched from behind a false wall panel as 4 alien soldiers examined her equipment. They moved carefully, their weapons ready, but they showed no real concern about danger. These warriors had conquered so many different races that they expected all aliens to be weak and frightened. Chen had modified her engine displays to show false readings. The aliens would think they were looking at primitive technology, barely advanced enough for interstellar travel. They would have no idea that the Liberty's real power systems were hidden behind layers of deception and misdirection. Fascinating, one of the Zephyrian soldiers said in their own language, not knowing that every human on the ship could understand their words. Human intelligence had cracked their communication codes months ago. These aliens use fusion reactors, but their design is very basic. Probably only developed space travel recently. The aliens began accessing computer terminals throughout the ship. What they did not know was that every system they touched was feeding information directly back to human intelligence networks. The computers they thought they were hacking were actually specially prepared decoy systems, designed to make humanity appear less advanced than they really were. In the medical bay, Dr. Karen Foster watched through a hidden camera as 2 Zephyrian soldiers examined her equipment. They handled the medical instruments roughly, clearly not understanding their purpose. One soldier tried to activate a surgical laser, but it would not respond to his touch. All the real medical equipment had been locked down and hidden before the boarding began. Strange tools, the soldier commented to his partner. These aliens must be very primitive if this is their medical technology. Foster smiled grimly as she listened to their conversation. The aliens were seeing exactly what they were supposed to see, evidence of a young race that had only recently developed space travel. They would report back to their commanders that humanity posed no threat to the Zephyrian Empire. Throughout the ship, the alien boarding teams continued their search. They found crew quarters, storage areas, and workstations, but no sign of the people who operated this vessel. Some soldiers began to wonder if they had been tricked somehow, but their commanders assured them that their sensors had detected life forms on this ship before the boarding began. All teams, converge on the command center, Kexeno ordered after an hour of fruitless searching. If there are survivors on this vessel, they will be hiding on the bridge. The Zephyrian soldiers gathered in the corridor outside the Liberty's command center. They had found blast doors sealed shut, but their cutting tools could handle any barrier these primitive aliens might have constructed. As they prepared to breach the final obstacle, they felt confident that victory was within reach. Behind the sealed doors, Captain Jake Morrison sat calmly in his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew remained hidden in concealed positions. They had waited patiently for the aliens to reach this point. Now it was time for the Zephyrians to meet humanity properly. Security teams, prepare for contact, Morrison said quietly into his communicator. Let them come to us. The cutting tools began their work on the blast doors. Sparks flew as the metal began to give way. In a few minutes, the Zephyrian soldiers would break through and expect to find cowering aliens ready to surrender. Instead, they were about to discover that they had walked into a carefully prepared trap set by a species they had never encountered before, one that had been preparing for this meeting for a very long time. The blast doors to the Liberty's command center finally gave way under the Zephyrian cutting tools. Sparks scattered across the deck as the heavy metal panels collapsed inward. Boarding leader Kexnel stepped through the opening first, his plasma rifle ready to fire at any target that moved. What he found made him stop in confusion. A single human sat calmly in the captain's chair at the center of the bridge. The alien was smaller than a Zephyrian, with pale skin and dark hair. He wore a blue uniform with strange symbols on the collar. Most surprising of all, he showed no fear or surprise at seeing armed warriors break into his command center. Captain Jake Morrison turned slowly in his chair to face the alien soldiers. His hands remained visible and empty, showing he carried no weapons. His blue eyes met Kexnel's yellow ones without flinching. When he spoke, his words came out in perfect Zephyrian language. "Welcome aboard the USS Liberty," Morrison said with a slight smile. "We have been expecting you." Kexnel raised his plasma rifle, pointing it directly at the human's chest. His mind struggled to understand what was happening. How could this alien speak their language? Why was he not afraid? Where was the rest of his crew? "You will surrender immediately," Kexnal demanded, his voice harsh through his suit's speakers. "Prepare for transport to our command vessel for interrogation." Morrison remained seated, completely relaxed. "I do not think so," he replied calmly. "Computer, execute Protocol 7. Suddenly, the lighting throughout the entire ship changed from normal white to harsh red. Warning alarms began sounding in every corridor. Blast doors slammed shut throughout the vessel, sealing the Zephyrian boarding teams into separate sections. Hidden panels slid open throughout the ship, revealing human crew members in full combat gear. They appeared in every corridor where alien soldiers had been searching. Their weapons were already aimed at the surprised Zephyrians. The hunters had suddenly become the hunted. "What you have discovered," Morrison continued in the same conversational tone, "is that humanity has been preparing for this encounter for quite some time. Your species has been expanding through this sector for 37 years. You have conquered 14 different civilizations. You made one critical mistake in your expansion strategy." Kexnal found his voice, though it sounded shaken. "What mistake?" Morrison stood up from his chair for the first time, his movement slow and deliberate. "You assumed you were the apex predators in this region of space. Throughout the Liberty, human security teams began systematically disarming and capturing the Zephyrian boarding parties. The aliens quickly discovered that their prey had somehow become their captors. Their advanced combat suits offered little protection against weapons that had been specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in Zephyrian technology. Security Chief Danny Carter led the operation from his command post. "Team Alpha, disable their communication systems first," he ordered through his headset. "Team Beta, target their weapon power cells. Team Delta, prepare restraint systems." The humans moved with precision and coordination that surprised the alien soldiers. These were not panicked civilians running in fear. These were trained military personnel executing a carefully planned operation. Every move had been practiced. Every contingency had been prepared for. Dr. Karen Foster's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "All Zephyrian personnel, please remain calm. You are being exposed to a mild sedative gas that will not harm your silicon-based physiology. Resistance will only make the process take longer." The aliens found themselves breathing air that made them feel dizzy and weak. Their combat suits' environmental systems had been designed to filter out most toxins, but human scientists had developed the sedative specifically to work on Zephyrian biology. Intelligence gathered from previous encounters had provided detailed information about their respiratory systems. On the Zephyrian command ship, Commander Velthar watched in growing horror as his boarding team's signals went dark one by one. His sensor operator's hands shook as he read the displays. "Commander, we are detecting massive energy buildups throughout the alien vessel," the young Zephyrian reported. His voice was barely a whisper. "Their true power signature is beyond our measurement scale." The USS Liberty had been hiding its real capabilities since the chase began. Now, with the revelation complete, the ship began to show what human military engineering could accomplish when given sufficient motivation and preparation time. Weapon systems that had been concealed beneath false hull plating powered up. Shield generators that had been running at minimum power reached full strength. "Impossible," Velthar breathed as he watched the readings. "No species in this sector possesses such technology." But humans were not from this sector. They came from a distant region of space where competition was fierce and survival required constant innovation. Earth had developed advanced military technology through centuries of warfare with their own kind. They understood strategy and tactics in ways that the Zephyrians, who relied on overwhelming force, had never needed to learn. Back on the Liberty's bridge, Morrison walked slowly toward Kexnal. The alien soldier found that his weapon would not fire. Human electronic warfare systems had disabled all Zephyrian equipment the moment Protocol 7 was activated. "Your soldiers are unharmed," Morrison assured the boarding leader. "They are being sedated and restrained for their own safety. In a few hours, when this is over, they will be returned to your ships. But first, you and I need to have a conversation about the future of this region." Morrison gestured toward the viewing screen, which now showed something that made Kexnal's blood run cold. Ships were appearing from seemingly empty space around the Zephyrian fleet. Dozens of vessels materialized as their cloaking systems deactivated. Some were human warships with sleek, deadly lines. Others were ships from species that Kexanal recognized, races that the Zephyrian Empire had conquered years ago. You see, Morrison explained, humanity does not expand through conquest. We expand through alliance. Every species your empire has subjugated has been contacted by human diplomatic teams. They have been waiting for this moment just as we have. The revelation was complete. The Zephyrians had not captured a helpless vessel from a primitive race. They had walked into a trap set by a coalition of species united against Zephyrian oppression. The hunting party had become the prey, and their entire worldview was about to be challenged in ways they had never imagined possible. 6 hours later, Commander Velthar sat across from Captain Jake Morrison in the Liberty's conference room. The Zephyrian commander no longer wore his battle armor. His gray skin looked pale under the soft lighting, and his yellow eyes showed confusion and fear. He was no longer a hunter pursuing prey. He was a prisoner trying to understand how his entire world had changed in a single day. Morrison slid a datapad across the smooth table surface. The device contained information that would shock any Zephyrian military leader. Your boarding teams are safe and unharmed, Morrison said in a calm voice. They will be returned to your ships within the hour. However, this encounter has changed everything about how this sector of space will operate from now on. Velthar picked up the datapad with shaking hands. As he read through the files, his mandibles clicked nervously. The device contained detailed intelligence reports about every Zephyrian military installation, fleet movement, and conquered territory within 50 light-years of their current position. Information that should have been impossible for any alien race to obtain. How is this possible? Velthar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We have never made contact with your species before today. How do you know so much about our empire? Morrison leaned back in his chair, his expression serious but not unkind. Humanity has been observing your expansion for over 1 year. We sent scout ships to every world you have conquered. We spoke with every species you have enslaved. We analyzed every battle you have fought. We know your tactics, your technology, and your psychology. The human captain paused to let his words sink in before continuing. More importantly, we know about the civilizations you have destroyed, the cultures you have erased, the billions of innocent beings who have suffered under Zephyrian rule. Velthar's claws scraped against the table surface as his hands clenched into fists. You intend to attack our empire? To wage war against us? Morrison shook his head slowly. We intend to liberate it. Every species you have conquered, every world you have enslaved, every culture you have attempted to erase. Humanity does not expand through conquest, Commander. We expand through alliance and cooperation. Through the conference room's large viewing port, Velthar could see a sight that filled him with dread. His 5 warships were surrounded by dozens of vessels that had appeared from seemingly empty space. Human ships with angular hulls and advanced weapon systems hung in formation alongside vessels from species he recognized all too well. There were Altarian cruisers, their beautiful curved hulls gleaming in the starlight. The Altarians had been one of the first races the Zephyrian Empire had conquered 30 years ago. Their peaceful nature had made them seem like perfect slaves. But apparently they had not forgotten their desire for freedom. Kepler defense platforms floated near the human ships, their modular designs bristling with weapons that the Zephyrians had thought were permanently under their control. The Kepler colonies had been enslaved for their advanced technology, but it seemed they had been sharing that technology with their new human allies. Ships from a dozen other conquered races filled the space around the Zephyrian fleet. Some Velthar recognized immediately. Others represented species he had thought were completely destroyed years ago. All of them carried weapons, and all of them were pointed at his ships. The beings you have subjugated have been contacted by human diplomatic teams, Morrison explained, his voice calm but firm. They have been secretly preparing for this moment for months. They are ready to fight for their freedom, and humanity is prepared to help them achieve it. Morrison stood up and walked to the viewing port, gazing out at the assembled fleet. The question now is whether the Zephyrian Empire wants to face a united coalition of every species you have wronged, supported by human military technology, or whether you would prefer to negotiate a peaceful transition to a more equitable arrangement. Velthar followed the human's gaze, studying the ships that surrounded his fleet. He had commanded Zephyrian forces for decades, but he had never seen anything like this. The combined fleet represented more firepower than his entire battle group could handle. More importantly, it represented something he had never encountered before: unity among his victims. "What do you want from us?" Velthar asked, his voice defeated. Morrison turned back to face the alien commander. "We want you to stop. No more conquests. No more slavery. No more destruction of innocent civilizations. The Zephyrian Empire's expansion ends here and now." The human captain returned to his seat and leaned forward, his expression becoming more intense. "But this does not have to mean the end of your people. Every species in this coalition has something to offer. The Altarians have advanced agricultural techniques that could feed your population without needing to steal resources from others. The Kepler colonies have technology that could improve your ships and cities." Morrison gestured toward the datapad. "Humanity has medical knowledge that could extend Zephyrian lifespans and cure diseases that have plagued your people for generations. Working together, all of our species could accomplish things that none of us could achieve alone." Velthar looked down at the datapad again, scrolling through pages of information about human capabilities. Their technology was decades ahead of anything the Zephyrian Empire possessed. Their understanding of strategy and tactics was sophisticated in ways that Zephyrian military doctrine had never considered. "Your hunting days are over," Morrison said with finality. "But if you are willing to learn, we can teach you what humanity discovered long ago through our own violent history. True strength does not come from dominating others. It comes from standing together." The Zephyrian commander stared out at the fleet surrounding his ships. Representatives from species his empire had conquered for decades were now working together as equals. They had found something his people had never understood: the power that came from cooperation instead of conquest. "What happens now?" Velthar asked. Morrison smiled for the first time since the conversation began. "Now you go back to your empire and deliver our message. Tell your leaders that the age of Zephyrian expansion is over, but also tell them that the age of cooperation is beginning, if they are wise enough to accept it." As Velthar contemplated this impossible reversal of fortune, he began to understand that his species had not encountered mere prey when they found the USS Liberty. They had discovered something far more dangerous than any apex predator. They had found a species that turned victims into allies, enemies into partners, and conquest into cooperation. The Zephyrian Empire would never be the same, but perhaps that was not entirely a bad thing. For the first time in his long military career, Velthar began to wonder what his people might accomplish if they learned to build instead of destroy.